So chances are, if you've deployed to Kubernetes, you may have used a tool like Kustomize. And I have two members of the modern deployments team here. I've got Kit and I've got Yihao, who are here to talk about how we are going to support Kustomize soon into the future. Welcome.
Hi, John.
So Kustomize, which you can find at kustomize.io, is a tool for configuration management. It's built into kubectl or kubectl or whatever you like, however you like to pronounce it these days. Kit, you're the PM for the team, the product manager. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about what Kustomize is and why we are announcing support for it?
Yeah, so Kustomize is a very popular tool to configure YAML for Kubernetes. It's getting more and more popular, and it's getting more and more feature rich. Sorry, getting more
There you
and
go.
more feature rich. So, why would people use that? So, yeah, you can describe everything which you want to deploy to Kubernetes in plain YAML, and it will work for a while. But as soon as you get more into depth, as soon as you need to deploy multiple apps, or you want to do multiple environments, you have to change this configuration to adjust it a little bit for individual app or environment. And that means just editing a lot of YAML, which might be laborious and just generate a lot of errors. At some point, you can start thinking about why would I just use something like a script language to change some values in the text file. But again, it's really hard to maintain, and as soon as you want to go and change 50 or maybe even 15 things in a file, that will be really hard to manage long term and just avoid making some errors. So Kustomize just do it for you. And we in Octopus, being a very good tool, I think, with modeling environments and tenants, have our own way to do that. So we use variables. So basically, what we suggest, and we still suggest that as the definitely first easy step to start, is you can use YAML and just embed Octopus variables there. And it will give you options like changing number of replicas, resources, container names and tags, labels, and many, many other things. So all that is possible if you use Kustomize and model environments and tenants with Octopus. So yeah, that's why we built it.
And Yihao, you're going to show us a demo, is that right?
Yes, and to be exact, I'm going to show two demos today. So we're going to start from a simple demo to show how to quickly set up a customized project in Octopus. And then we're going to move on to a more complex one in which I'm going to demo how to combine the power of Kustomize and Octopus to achieve more advanced things such as tenanted deployment and using a step as a template for multiple projects. Okay, so let's start with the basic example. So here, what I'm showing in screen is a project which I have already configured with a customized step. So let's look at the process that is configured. So you can see we have introduced the customized step, which is the only step that is there for this project. So let's walk through the configurations for this step, and you'll realize it is very, very easy to set up. At the beginning, we need to put some common configurations, just the same as other steps. The thing to notice here is you probably need to put in this container image because we are relying on the dependency of the customization command line tool. So you need to use a container image which contains this tool so that you can run it, or you need to install it on your execution location.
Sorry to stop you for a second, but just to be clear, what that worker tools image, there are a number of worker tool images that we
Yep.
actually have
Yeah, that's
available,
right.
and this is one that will obviously support Kubernetes. So in case you've never seen this before, you'll find these up on Docker Hub,
Yep.
and you'll be able to grab those and use them in a variety of scenarios. Sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
All good. Thanks for explanation. Then if we look at the configurations that's for the customized step, you'll notice there's really not too much here. We only have three configurations. So the first one is a Git repository. So here is where you put your customization file in the Git repository, and you put the Git repository URL to this configuration, basically. Obviously, you need to put your Git credential beforehand so that we can talk to this repository. And you also need to set up a default branch for us to check out from. So in this demo, I have created this repository, which is basically this one. And later on, we're going to inspect the content of this repository and see how we can achieve all the magic with Kustomize. And then, in case you don't know, in Kustomize, you're going to write a customization.yaml file. So this customization.yaml file is the main configuration file, which itself is going to reference all the other bits and pieces that you have configured. So it is important for us to make sure which customization file you're doing. So here we have an option for you to put the customization file directory. In my case, I put overlay slash, and here is an Octopus variable replacement. I simply put a Octopus environment name here. So this variable is going to be linked with the actual environment name that I have configured. For example, in development, it's going to be development. In production, it's going to be production. And this is actually linked to my repository structure. And if we go back to the repository, you can see there is a overlays folder. And under this overlays folder, we have 3 different folders corresponding to 3 environments: development, production, and staging. So in this configuration, this is going to be replaced during the deployment time to the corresponding folder. And if we look at the repository, in each folder, there's a customization.yaml file. So this is the location Kustomize command line tool is going to look at. Right. So the third configuration here is the variable substitution file. In this basic example, we don't enable variable substitutions, so we don't have that. So we can skip that. So yeah, basically that's it. And that's the only thing that you need to configure. And now let's look at what we have put in the repository to do the deployment. So here is the repository that I have linked in my project. You can see there's a base folder and there's an overlays folder. So the base folder is where you put all the Kubernetes resources, which is the shared part. And in each overlay, you can put some more customizations here, which actually changes something in the base folder to something specific to that environment. So let's have a look at the base first. So this customization file basically is just a manifest that says we have 2 resources controlled by this base. They are deploy.yaml and service.yaml. In the deploy.yaml, we're actually configure a deployment. So you can see we have only one Kubernetes resource here, which has the kind deployment. And here we have a replica of 1. So we're running 1 pod for this deployment. And this deployment is using a container called Nginx with the image Nginx. What we also do is we also mount a volume to this path. So if you're familiar with Nginx, you should know that this path is actually the welcome page HTML that is set for Nginx. So if you put any file in this HTML file location, then this is going to be rendered on the screen. So, and you'll be wondering, where does this come from? And that's actually come from a config map. But if you look at this base repository, you'll see no config maps existing here. And that's because we are using a different config map for a different environment. So we put those into their corresponding environment overlay folder. Right, so this is the deployment. What we also do is we have a service. So the service is going to expose this deployment to the internet. Here we're using a load balancer type. So because we're deploying this on AKS, if we use the load balancer, it will make the application publicly accessible. We'll see this in a minute. Right, so that's basically what is in the base folder. Very simple, just 2 things, 1 deployment and a service. Now let's look at the overlays folder. Let's start from the deployment. If we look at the customization YAML, we can see we're doing some more configurations here. So first of all, we're referencing the resources. Firstly, we're pointing to the base, which basically means this folder. And we also add one more resource on the top of it, which is this config map, which is here. If we look at the config map, we can see it is basically very simple, just an HTML file in its raw form. Here we're saying we will have something on the screen saying hello from development. As you have probably guessed here, in production, we've changed this file to hello from production. And in staging, we've changed this to hello from staging. Right, let's go back to the customization. Other than this config map.yaml, we have to do some other customizations here. Firstly, we're going to put this in a separate namespace, which is called dev at the end of it. And we also say for any resources that is deployed in as part of this deployment, we're going to have a suffix to its name so that we can differentiate between the resources deployed from different environments. And also, we're going to put a common label for all resources created from this deployment to say the environment equals development. So this is it for development. If we move on to production, we'll see something similar here, but we are also doing some extra stuff, which is we're introducing a patch. So this syntax is provided by Kustomize to allow you to customize any parts of a resource definition. So here you can see we're targeting the deployment resource with the name of this. And what we're going to do is we're going to replace the replicas to number of 5. If you still remember, in the base deployment, we have replicas equals to 1. And in the development environment, we didn't do any patches for that. But in production, we're replacing that to 5, which means if we deploy this to production, we should see 5 pods running. And similar idea, in staging, we simply run 2 pods. So yeah, basically this is the configuration. And let's have a look at a previous deployment, which I have run before this demo to see what is deployed here. So this is a previously successful deployment. Let's first look at the development environment. So the good thing about Kustomize is you can utilize our previously released Kubernetes object status check feature, so which allows you to inspect what resources has been deployed in this deployment. So here we can see we have a deployment called this name, and it has correctly have a name suffix of dev here. We also have a service here. We also have the config map here. And because I deploy the service as a load balancer, it'll have an external IP, which is actually a real IP that is accessible. So if we go to this, we can see this one. This is from the actual running app, hello from development. And now let's go to production and see what is deployed in production. So in production, you can see there are 5 pods. That's because we have patched the replica number from 1 to 5. So now you can see 5 pods running here. And the similar idea, if we go to the public IP of this service, you can see a hello from production. This is because we changed the content of the configuration.yaml, the config map.yaml for production environment. So yeah, basically this is it. This is how this is a simple example of how you use Kustomize to deploy with Octopus. And now let's go to another project, which I'll demo how we achieve multi-tenancy with the combination of customization and Octopus variables. So let's look at this example. Again, we're going to have a look at the process. The process is, well, more or less similar to the one before, except for I am pointing to another repository, which is this one here. And also, I'm using the same folder structure. So I'm pointing to the same overlays folder here, overlays / Octopus environment name. But what I have done more in this project is that I also configured the substitution variables in files. So here I have put overlays / Octopus environment name / customization.yaml. So this means I want to perform some variable substitution in this file. And also I want to do some variable substitution in this file. And basically this is it. And also I have configured this project to be a multi-tenant project. So we have client A and client B. And in reality, you may want to configure much more tenants here instead of just 2. But anyway, let's look at the repository and understand what we're doing with Kustomize. So the structure of this project is very similar to the one before. We have a base, and we also have overlays, which contains folders corresponding to the environments. And in the base image, we're doing basically exactly the same thing as before, except for that we changed the name a little bit. And the customization is exactly the same as before. The service is also the same as before, except for that we changed the name and the selector, etc. But what this differs from the previous one is we have put some variables into the overlays folder. So if you see here, this is the config map.yaml under the development environment folder. So here you can see we have put an Octopus variable here. Here we say, hello, Octopus deployment tenant name from deployment. So what is going to happen is in the deployment time, Octopus is going to find this file based on your configuration, and we're going to perform variable substitution. So here, this tenant.name will become client A, for example. Yeah, and we're doing the similar magic in the customization.yaml. So here, other than the patches and customization, similar to what we have done in the previous example, here we also put some variables here. So for example, here in the namespace, we put Octopus deployment tenant name, and we want that to be lowercase so that it is compatible with the requirement of namespace name. And we also put some labels. So if you're a tenant client A, we want the tenant to be client A so that we can differentiate different pods from different tenants. And here we also use an image substitution here. So this is also something included in Kustomize. So we're able to say we want to find an image called Nginx, and we're going to replace the Nginx to a different name. And this name also is configured as a Octopus variable. So this variable is image.name. The tag is image.tag. So if you're curious where those are coming from, let's just go back to the project, and you will see we have configured those two as variables. So the image name here I configured Nginx, and the image tag I put it as Alpine, so that we can differentiate, so we can tell that this variable is really substituted. So here, after the variable substitution, this is going to be Nginx still, but this tag is going to be Alpine. And the other stuff are very similar to what we have configured in the previous project. For production, it is the same, except for the name has been different and the replicas. Right, so let's have a look at what this looks like after it has been deployed. You can see because I enabled multi-tenancy, there's one role for each tenant. Let's look at the client A of development environment first. Again, we're going to check the object status. So here you can see, as what we have expected, there's one pod of this development. But here, because I have configured the namespace to include a variable, you can see in the namespace of this resource, it actually contains a client A here, so that different resources are deployed to different namespace. And the service, similar to before, if we have a look at this external IP, let's go there, we can actually see hello client A from development. So similar idea, if we, for example, go to tenant client B and we look at the production, you'll see that we have 5 pods running, and each of the pod is in the client B namespace. And in the service, you can also see the external IP. Let's open it up. You'll see hello client B from production. So here, with a combination of Kustomize and Octopus variables, we have achieved multi-tenancy deployment. And one thing more to mention, remember we have set the image name and image tag here. We can check it. Unfortunately, the image are not shown on our object status check. So let's just go to Azure itself. And so this is the resource that we have configured. Let's see the prod one. And it has 5 pods, and click into one pod. It should tell us which image is running. You can see it is Nginx Alpine, so which means our image has been already replaced. And with this technique, you can imagine if you want to deploy a similar project, but has a different image, you can basically just change this value and this value, and that's it. Awesome. That's my demo. I'll hand back to John. Thank you.
Excellent. You saw a lot of stuff there. So let's recap just so everyone's clear. First and foremost, I just want to point out where you can find this stuff. So if you add a step to your deployment process, you'll find it under the Kubernetes section here. And in particular, you'll see this button here that says Kustomize. This is where you'll add this to your deployment process. But getting back to your demo here quickly, you showed a number of things. Okay, so we showed particularly how you integrate with Kustomize for controlling the number of pods running for different environments. That's based on a Kubernetes deployment. So this is, it's kind of confusing sometimes when you confuse Octopus with Kubernetes. Like we both call them deployments, but one's defining sort of like a replicate set. So we're defining or controlling the number of pods per environment, basically.
Yep.
And then we're utilizing that Kustomize step to patch based on the environment upon which we're targeting. In the second demo, you combine that with multi-tenancy. All throughout, you're also using Octostash for variable substitution. Octostash is that double mustache sort of notation you saw with the hash. It has a variety of capabilities that you can put in there. So that's our Octostash capability there that allows you to do variable substitution. And so some questions that come up, at least from my perspective of, obviously overlays is a term you could override. I'm assuming you don't have to use that term overlays. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So basically what we need to do is simply to make sure this one points to a customization file, and that's it.
Right.
You don't have to call it overlays. You can call it any name you want.
Yep. And in terms of conventions, other conventions, is there anything that comes out through the step itself that is relative to Kustomize? Like for folks who are traditionally using kubectl and use Kustomize through the apply function, is there any other conventions that we model or that we replicate inside of Octopus so that people who come to Octopus will say, oh, this is just like utilizing Kustomize from the command line?
Yeah, sure. So the structure that I have chosen in this demo is a very typical project structure for a pure customized file, customized project. So if you're already using Kustomize, it's very easy for you to just like link this repository to Octopus. Maybe one caveat is the name here may not be like directly corresponding to the actual environment name that you have configured in Octopus, right? So here I'm directly using that. But if this is not the case, what you can do is you can define a different variable. For example, you just call it Kustomize environment. And then under the variables, what you can do is you can add another variable called the environment, and you can define different values for different environments so that during the deployment time, Octopus can find the correct corresponding customization file, because yeah, as long as Octopus can find this YAML file, it is compatible with all Kustomize projects.
Fantastic. So Kit, this is available in 2023.3?
Yes, it's already in the cloud, and you can have it when you release on-prem.
Excellent. And I assume we have customers using it already. And this is listed on our roadmap as well, which I highlighted during the beginning of the talk, where you had outlined here our motivation for building this out. So everything's articulated here on our roadmap. And I've constantly made the point of make roadmap.octopus.com your homepage, if not a bookmark. Is there anything else that you would like to share with folks around this step?
Oh, that's probably it. The only thing I would ask is please let us know how it works for you, and if you have any feedback, we are really open to hear it and happy to chat with any customer. If you just leave your comments here in the roadmap, or community Slack, or in any other way, there are multiple. So please don't hesitate.
Awesome. All right. Yihao, thanks for the great demo. That was awesome. And Kit, thanks for the background context there. That was awesome. So there you go. Kustomize now in 2023.3. Hope you enjoy it. Let us know what you think.